එදිනෙදා ඔබේ මුළු සිරුරටම රැකවරණයක්. සුදේශී කොඹ සබන්.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50 අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Tonight, positive trend. No COVID-19 patients recorded from communities within the past 2 weeks as 63 more recover from the virus. Partial normalcy. Island-wide curfew planned for coming Sunday. A telephone call to the president. Chinese head of state suggests gradual resumption of practical cooperation between the two countries. Coming out of its shell, stock market overcomes initial shivers to record second day of gains. All that and much more coming up on First at 9, this Thursday the 14th of May 2020.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9.
6997ට SMS කර රුපියල් මිලියන 3ක මුල්තැන්ගේ උපකරණ දිනාගෙන අවුරුද්දෙම කුස්සිය ටයිම් සේව් කරගන්න.
Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhamike Naika. Now, Sri Lanka today recorded its highest COVID-19 recovery rate, with 63 patients being discharged from hospitals after full recovery. To follow up on the recovery rate of 48.5%, health authorities confirmed that during the past 2 weeks, no COVID-19 infected persons were found from communities, barring the clusters which emerged due to the virus spread at the Valisara Naval Base and quarantine centres. However, Director General of Health Services Dr. Anil Jayasinghe says an island-wide reopening isn't wise at the moment, while cautioning people not to take the situation lightly.
Following the detection of fresh cases yesterday, the number of COVID-19 infected people in the country crossed the 900 mark. Since the detection of the first COVID-19 patient in the country, the first batch of 100 infections were reported in a span of 14 days. The second 100 batch of COVID-19 patients were found within 18 days, while it took 9 days for the third batch of 100 patients to be reported. It only took 4 days for the fourth batch of 100 patients to be reported. Following this, an exponential rise in cases was experienced, taking only 2 days for the fifth and sixth batches of 100 patients to be reported. The seventh and eighth batch of patients were reported in a span of 5 days, while the ninth batch of 100 patients were reported in 7 days. Over the past 7 days, barring the clusters which emerged due to the virus spread among naval personnel at the Valisara base, only 4 infected persons have been found in quarantine facilities and during field tests. The 4 patients detected in quarantine arrived in the country from Dubai on the 7th of this month. As of 12:30 p.m. today, a total of 607 cases of coronavirus infections have been identified since the first Navy sailor was diagnosed on the 22nd of April after contracting the virus during operations to round up suspected cases in Suduwella Jayala. Among the 607 cases are 514 naval personnel and their associates. Accordingly, during the past 22 days outside the clusters infected by the spread at the Valisara Naval Base, quarantine centres and field infections have only reported 93 infected patients. No infected patient was detected within communities other than the clusters that emerged due to the spread at the Valisara Naval Base. In the meantime, of the 26 COVID-19 cases identified yesterday, all of them are personnel of the Valisara Naval Base. Accordingly, the overall figure of coronavirus COVID-19 patients in the country has now risen to 916. With a staggering 63 recovered patients walking out of hospitals today, the country's recovered tally now stands at 445, which has boosted the recovery rate to 48.5%, the highest Sri Lanka has seen so far. Out of the 480 naval personnel diagnosed with COVID-19, 121 have now recovered. Meanwhile, 288 Sri Lankans in the Maldives who were unable to return to the country arrived back this evening on board a Sri Lankan Airlines flight. Upon their arrival, they were directed to the relevant facilities for the mandatory quarantine process. Sri Lankan Airlines recently announced that it will commence flights to several designated destinations. Accordingly, flight UL 503 airlifted 96 passengers to London last night. Among the passengers are British nationals, Canadians and Sri Lankans who are also citizens of these countries.
Of course, always happy to go back to family, but we had a good stay. Sri Lanka did really good in the virus.
Meanwhile, the new departures terminal at the Bandaranaike International Airport was declared open today. The new terminal was built on the instructions of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa in order to prevent traffic congestion caused during entry and exit. The event was presided over by the chairman of the Airport and Aviation Services, retired Major General G.A. Chandrasiri. The minister in charge of the subject, Prasanna Ranatunga, was also present during the occasion. Meanwhile, a total of 111 persons, including close associates of Navy personnel, who successfully completed the quarantine process at the Army-run quarantine centre at Periyakadu, left for home today. Meanwhile, 223 more naval family members returned home today as well. Meanwhile, medical officers at the COVID-19 treatment centre located at the Colombo East Base Hospital in Mulleriyawa held musical performances with the aim of raising the spirit of the patients receiving treatment.
කොරෝනා වෛරසය පැතිරීම වළක්වන්න සබන් යොදා දෑත් සෝදන්න.
Now, former parliamentarian Dr. Rajitha Senaratne today filed a petition before the Court of Appeal seeking an invalidation of the High Court order which revoked his bail. The remanded former MP is currently at the Pallansen Isolation Centre in Negombo. According to the Commissioner General of Prisons, Senaratne will remain at the facility for 21 days.
The Colombo High Court yesterday invalidated the bail order issued by the Colombo Chief Magistrates Court on former MP Dr. Rajitha Senaratne. Afterwards, Colombo Chief Magistrate Lanka Jayaratne ordered the CID to produce Senaratne before court, and with that being the case, Senaratne surrendered to the CID. When Senaratne was produced before the Colombo Chief Magistrates Court, Colombo Chief Magistrate Lanka Jayaratne asked whether the former MP is being arrested and then being produced before court. In response, the CID said that since the magistrate's order only sought Senaratne being produced before court, the former MP was not arrested and was allowed to appear before court through his legal counsel. Appearing on behalf of the complainants, Deputy Solicitor General Dilip Apiri said that the case was being heard in line with the order issued by the Colombo High Court, setting aside the magistrate's order to grant Senaratne bail on the 30th of December last year. As such, he said, he assumes that the Chief Magistrate had comprehensively studied the 70-paged order issued by the High Court judge. Expressing her displeasure over the remark, the Colombo Chief Magistrate said that it is inappropriate for an attorney at law to inquire whether a lower court judge had studied an order given by an upper court. With Colombo Chief Magistrate Lanka Jayaratne addressing him as an attorney at law, Dilip Apiri expressed his displeasure, insisting that he be addressed as the state's Deputy Solicitor General. The Deputy Solicitor General also requested from court that Senaratne be remanded for at least 14 days since he was not present when the High Court judgment was issued. The legal counsel appearing on behalf of Senaratne then said that remanding his client carries a risk to his life in a COVID-19 backdrop since he is a 70-year-old who had undergone a heart surgery. The Deputy Solicitor General, however, objected, argued that given COVID-19 infections are not reported from prisons, the best quarantine centre for the suspect is the prison. After considering submissions made by both parties, the Colombo Chief Magistrate remanded former MP Rajitha Senaratne until the 27th of May. Subsequently, Senaratne was taken to the Pallansena Isolation Centre in Negombo last evening after being remanded. Commissioner General of Prisons J.W. Tennakone said that given the COVID-19 situation in the country, prisoners sent to the Colombo Remand Prison are quarantined for 21 days at another prison premises. As such, Tennakone added that Senaratne will be kept at the Pallansena Isolation Centre in Negombo for 21 days. In the meantime, Senaratne has filed a petition at the Court of Appeal seeking the invalidation of the High Court order which revoked his bail.
Now, the Public Utilities Commission has promised to ensure fairness for electricity consumers in issuing of electricity bills and by offering sufficient grace periods for repayments. This comes as special rates have been issued for electricity bills for the past 2 months.
In a statement issued today, the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka, the Ceylon Electricity Board and Lanka Electricity Company have promised to ensure fairness for electricity consumers in the issuing of electricity bills and by offering sufficient grace periods for repayment. These measures are to be implemented by the CEB and LECO according to guidelines issued by the PUCSL. The statement says that the guidelines issued have instructed the companies to calculate electricity bills at concessionary rates according to the number of units received and to provide a sufficient time period for settlement. The concessionary rate to be charged for bills during this period is based on consumption of 120 units per month, where the first 60 units are to be charged at ₹2.50, while the second 60 units are to be charged at ₹4.85. Accordingly, the fixed rate for each month will be ₹60 and will total to ₹120 for the 2 months. Further, when bills are issued for 2 months or more simultaneously, the total amount applicable for each month must be communicated to the electricity consumer separately in 2 bills. The guidelines also state that the public must be informed of the grace period for the settlement of each monthly bill, which must be published by the CEB and LECO. Further, the Commission has instructed that no disconnections are to be carried out until the grace period and conditions have been announced. Meanwhile, with the possibility of there being more than one billing cycle in the time gaps between meter readings, the Commission has instructed the utility companies to divide the units consumed equally for each month on a prorate basis when issuing bills. In addition, electricity connections will not be disconnected in the event of complaints regarding current or future bills that have been issued until the issuance of the bills is carried out on time. The CEB and LECO have been instructed to resolve each complaint expeditiously, while consumers have been advised to reach out to the PUCSL if there are any disputes with regard to resolutions over bills with electricity providers. The statement also calls on the public to support the financial situation of the institutions by the prompt settlement of bills issued for delayed months, as this would be key in their ability to provide uninterrupted supply in the future. The PUCSL says that it had taken proposals made by CEB and LECO as well as complaints from electricity consumers when preparing the guidelines.
Now, Cabinet co-spokesperson Dr. Ramesh Pathirana rejects claims that foreign aid has been used to fund the government's program to provide relief to the people during the COVID-19 outbreak. Addressing the Cabinet media briefing today, he revealed that 60 billion rupees was spent in the months of April and May, and all of it were public funds. Meanwhile, Cabinet co-spokesperson Dr. Bandula Gunawardena revealed that authorization for imports of certain non-essential consumer goods will be permitted only if importers are able to negotiate credit terms of around 90 to 180 days with their suppliers.
සමහර භාණ්ඩ ලංකාවට මෝටර් වාහන සුඛෝපභෝගී භාණ්ඩ ආනයනය කිරීම සම්පූර්ණයෙන් තහනම් කරලා තියෙනවා. නමුත් අත්‍යවශ්‍ය පරිභෝජන භාණ්ඩ කිසිම තහනමක් නැහැ. අත්‍යවශ්‍ය නොවන එහෙත් අවශ්‍ය භාණ්ඩ ආනයනය කිරීමේදී මේ ඇති වෙලා තියෙන ද්‍රවශීලතා ප්‍රශ්නය නිසා ආනයනකරුවන්ට කියලා තියෙනවා තමන්ගේ සැපයුම් කරුවන් සමග සාකච්ඡා කරලා දින 90ක් 180කට පස්සේ මුදල් ගෙවීමේ එකඟතාවය මත භාණ්ඩ ගෙන්න ගන්න පුළුවන් නම් ඒ සඳහා විශේෂ අවසරයක් ලබා දෙනවා. උදාහරණයක් වශයෙන් ඉදිකිරීමේ කර්මාන්තයට අවශ්‍ය කරන යකඩ එවැනි ද්‍රව්‍ය ආනයනය කරන්නට ඉඩ දෙනවා. නමුත් ඔවුන් විසින් සකස් කරගත යුතුයි සැපියුම් කරුවන්ට ගේනකොටම මුදල් ගෙවන්න බෑ. ගෙවීම් කල් දාගෙන එවැනි දේ ගේන්න පුළුවන්කම ලබලා දීලා තියෙනවා.
පසුගිය වසරේ අපි ඇස්තමේන්තු කළ ප්‍රමාණයට වඩා යලකන්නේදී ගොඩමඩ ඉඩම් විශාල ප්‍රමාණයක් වගාවට යොමු කර තිබෙනවා ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ කෘෂි කර්මාන්තයට ලැබියාවක් දක්වන ලක්ෂ සංඛ්‍යාත පිරිසක් විසින්. එම නිසා යම් පමණකට රටේ ස්ථානවල පොහොර හිගයක් ඇති වී තිබෙන බව අපි දන්නවා. රජය හැටියට අමතර මුදල් මේ සඳහා වියදම් කරමින් ක්ෂණික ඇණවුම් ගත කරමින් ලංකාවට පොහොර තොග ලබා ගනිමින් සිටිනවා. දැනට ශ්‍රී ලංකාවට ත්‍රිත්ව සුපර් පොස්පේට් ආනයනි සඳහා රුපියල් බිලියන 7ක මුදලක් වැය වෙනවා. ලංකාවේ ඇති එප්පාවල සංචිතයේ ඇති රොක් පොස්පේට් යොදා ගනිමින් ඒකාබද්ධ ව්‍යාපෘතියක් හැටියට පෞද්ගලික සමාගමක් සම්බන්ධ කරගෙන ලංකාවේ ත්‍රිත්ව සුපර් පොස්පේට් වලට ආදේශකයක් හැටියට සිංගල් සුපර් පොස්පේට් නිෂ්පාදනය කිරීම සඳහා අවශ්‍ය අනුමැතිය ඊයේ කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයේදී ලබා දුන්නා.
අමාත්‍යතුමා දැනට විදේශ ආධාර මුදල් කොපමණ ලැබිලා තියෙනවද?
මේ කොවිඩ් අර්බුදය සම්බන්ධයෙන් මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශය බොහොම පැහැදිලිව ප්‍රකාශ කරලා තිබෙනවා. සියලුම සහනාධාර සඳහා ගෙවීම් කටයුතු කරලා තිබෙන ශ්‍රී ලංකා රජයේ සතු අරමුදල් වලින් මේ දක්වා අද වෙනතෙක් එකම ඩොලරයක්වත් කිසිම විදේශ ආයතනයකින් හෝ රටකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවට මේ වෙනුවෙන් ලැබී නොමැති බව අපි තාම වගකීමෙන් ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා. පසුගිය දිනවල විරුද්ධ පක්ෂයෙන් බොහොම පැහැදිලි චෝදනාවක් කළා තිබුණා ශ්‍රී ලංකා රජයට වාහන 3000ක පමණ ප්‍රමාණයක් ආනයනය කරලා තිබෙනවා කියන කාරණය. අපි කියනවා එකම වාහනයක්වත් රජයට ආනයනය කරේ නැහැ. ඒත් එකම අධිකරු ජනාධිපතිතුමන්ගේ ප්‍රතිපත්ති ප්‍රකාශනයේ බොහොම පැහැදිලිව තිබෙනවා මැති ඇමතිවරුන්ට සහ රජයට ඉදිරි වසර 3ක කාලය තුල එකම වාහනයක්වත් ආනයනය නොකරනවා කියන ප්‍රතිපත්තිය මේ අර්බුදයට කලින්ම අපි එළි දක්වලා තිබුණා. අද පවතින තත්ත්වයක් එක්ක අධිකරු ජනාධිපතිතුමන් අපි විශ්වාස කරන ඉදිරි වසර 5ක කාලය තුලදීම මැති ඇමතිවරුන්ට සහ රජයේ නිලධාරීන්ට වාහන ආනයනය කිරීමක් සිදු නොකරනවා කියලා අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා. සහනාධාර ගෙවීම සඳහා අප්‍රේල් සහ මැයි මාසය වෙනුවෙන් පමණක් ශ්‍රී ලංකා රජය රුපියල් බිලියන 60කට අධික මුදලක් වැය කරනවා.
Chinese President Xi Jinping and President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has had a telephone conversation. Details after this break.
නිෂ්පාදිත දිනය කවදත් අලුත් වටවල තේ අරගන්න.
වටවල තේ ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ තේ එක.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, China suggests the advancement of major cooperation projects with Sri Lanka in an orderly fashion and promote the high-quality construction of the Belt and Road while urging the gradual resumption of practical cooperation. These views had been communicated when China's President Xi Jinping had a telephone conversation with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa yesterday. The Chinese head of state had also noted that under President Gotabaya's strong leadership, Sri Lanka has effectively contained the spread of the epidemic.
Chinese President Xi Jinping suggests that China and Sri Lanka gradually resume practical cooperation in various fields. In a telephone conversation with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa yesterday, the Chinese head of state had also suggested the advancement of major cooperation projects between the two countries in an orderly manner and promote the high-quality construction of the Belt and Road while ensuring COVID-19 prevention and control. Xi had added that such efforts will provide impetus for Sri Lanka's economic recovery. He had further noted that under President Gotabaya's strong leadership, Sri Lanka has effectively contained the spread of the epidemic, adding that China stands ready to continue to provide firm support and as much assistance as its capacity allows for the South Asian country in line with its needs. The Chinese president had expressed his confidence that the people of Sri Lanka will certainly defeat the epidemic at an early date. She also thanked the Sri Lankan government and people for taking care of Chinese citizens in the island during the pandemic and said the Chinese side will continue to ensure the safety and health of Sri Lankan citizens on its soil. The Chinese president had added that China and Sri Lanka are strategic cooperation partners that enjoy sincere mutual help and an everlasting friendship. President Gotabaya is quoted saying that Sri Lanka is willing to work with China to enhance exchanges and cooperation in fields such as economy, trade, tourism and infrastructure and smoothly push forward major Belt and Road cooperation projects such as Colombo Port City, adding that Sri Lanka welcomes more investment from and cooperation with Chinese enterprises. He had added that Sri Lanka stands ready to work with China to promote the building of a community with a shared future for mankind.
Now, the President's Media Division has announced the imposition of an island-wide curfew on the 17th of May, which will continue in place until the 18th morning, except for the Colombo and Gampaha districts.
According to a media release issued by the President's Media Division, the curfew imposed on Colombo and Gampaha will continue in place until further notice. The media release added that the curfew will be in effect in other districts from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. daily until the 16th of May, while an island-wide curfew on the 17th of May will come into effect. The curfew will be relaxed in districts except Colombo and Gampaha at 5 am on Monday, May 18th, and will be effective from 8 pm to 5 am daily till Saturday, the 23rd of May. All other health and safety precautions are to remain in place throughout this period. Meanwhile, 10 trains were in service today catering to 2,766 private and public sector office workers travelling to Colombo from Beliatta, Alutgama, Panadura, Avissawella, Kandy, Mahava, Polgahawella, Gampaha and Homagama. With trains and buses authorised to travel with passengers based on the number of seats available, the Sri Lanka Transport Board stated that around 3,340 buses have been added to the fleet. A research report prepared by several lecturers to the University of Moratuwa was handed over to the Minister of Transport Services Management about the impact of the COVID-19 virus on bus passengers. According to the report, when the windows of the buses are open, the people at the rearmost end of the bus may be affected the most. What's more, the studies carried out have determined that wind flow travels forward from the rear end of the bus to the front. According to the study, if one person is infected, a simple sneeze can affect all passengers in the bus. In addition, the study has revealed that persons standing in buses are more susceptible to the virus. The research report showed that despite the number of passengers being boarded according to seat capacity, every passenger needs to wear face masks and sanitize their hands prior to boarding. In the meantime, public health inspectors were seen issuing strict warnings to people not adhering to health and safety protocols. Newly appointed ambassador to Sri Lanka from Brazil, Iran and India presented credentials to President Gotabaya Rajapaksa today. The credentials were provided via an online video call, marking it a historic event. Meanwhile, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa donated 3 months' salary to the COVID-19 Health and Social Security Fund. In the meantime, a media campaign titled Etukama, a fundraising initiative for the COVID-19 Healthcare and Social Security Fund established by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, was launched at the Defence Ministry yesterday.
Now, the Supreme Court has appointed a 5-member judge bench to hear the multiple fundamental rights petitions filed challenging the date set by the Election Commission to hold the general election this year. Accordingly, Chief Justice Jayanta Jayasuriya will serve as the chairman of the bench. Justices Buenak Aluihare, Sisira Diabru, Priyantha Jayawardena and Vijitha Malalgoda make up the remaining slots of the bench. 7 parties, including Attorney at Law Charita Gunaratna, Centre for Policy Alternatives, journalist Victor Ivan and the Samagi Janabalavega filed fundamental rights petitions challenging the election date set by the Election Commission. The Attorney General, on behalf of the President, Chairman of the Election Commission, Mahinda Deshapriya, and its members have been named as respondents of the petition. The petitions are fixed for support on the 18th and 19th this month. The Presidential Commission of Inquiry probing security failures relating to the Easter Sunday attacks summoned 2 high-ranking police officials, Western Province South DIG Vasantha Wickramasinghe and Senior DIG of the Western Province Deshabandhu Tennakoon, to answer queries on intelligence failures leading up to the fateful day.
Western Province South DIG Vasantha Wickramasinghe appeared before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry into the Easter Sunday attacks today. The commission inquired from the DIG as to when the warnings were received on the imminent attacks. In response, DIG Wickramasinghe said that the warnings of attacks on several churches and the Indian High Commission by the National Tawheed Jamaat organization was communicated to him by the State Intelligence Service on the 9th of April 2019. The DIG added that after receiving the letter, it had prepared a series of 16 orders informing the 2 senior superintendents of police in the area to take necessary action, and that the instructions were communicated by fax, telephone and delivered by hand. He added that from the 19th to the 21st of April, he assumed duties as the acting head of the Western Province North Division in lieu of DIG Deshabandhu Tennakoon, who was on leave during that period. The Commission then inquired from the DIG as to how orders were issued to the Western Province North Division. In response, the DIG stated that given that he was in an acting position from the 19th of April, the responsibility for any prior orders lay with DIG Deshabandhu Tennakoon. The Commission then questioned the DIG whether the orders issued by DIG Deshabandhu Tennakoon, in addition to the 16 issued by him, were sufficient for maintaining security of the area. The DIG responded that in his opinion, the directives issued by DIG Tennakoon were inadequate. He added that as the DIG in charge of both the Western Province South and North divisions, he had issued orders for police security to be provided to churches, which at 6 a.m. on the 21st April, he had witnessed were in place on his way to work that morning. Wickramasinghe then stated that after some time he had learned of the 2 suicide bombings launched against the Kochikade and Katuapitiya churches through TV Derana. In response to this statement, the Commission questioned the DIG on how it was that he only learned of the bombings via television, despite the police department possessing adequate communication technology. He added that at the time no police officials had notified him of the incidents and said that this was possibly due to an oversight considering the situation. The DIG also stated that DIG Ajit Rohana had informed him over the phone shortly after the attack that the OIC in charge of the Katana police station had not implemented any of the instructions on providing security to churches in the area. Following this testimony, the Commission then questioned Senior DIG of the Western Province, Deshabandhu Tennakone. The first question posed to the Senior DIG by the Commission was why he had only issued a single letter containing instructions along with orders from higher-ups at the time. In response, the Senior DIG stated that he refrained from including his opinion on the situation in the orders due to fears of any public outcry and being held accountable for any such misunderstandings in the future. He also stated to the Commission that the Intelligence Services letter on the Easter Sunday attacks did not constitute a direct warning of an attack. He added that although the State Intelligence Service, the Criminal Investigation Department and the Ministry of Defence were aware of the situation, there was no gravity attached to the warnings passed on from police higher-ups to their subordinates. The Senior DIG then proceeded to criticize the activities of the State Intelligence Service and Criminal Investigation Department, saying that even though the Eastern Province has been identified as the suspect's main area of operations, they had failed to brief the DIG in charge of the Eastern Province on the information. The Commission then questioned the Senior DIG as to why all parish priests and other related persons in the region were not briefed on the warnings. He responded saying that as the letter contained confidentiality clauses, he refrained from doing so to avoid creating panic among the public at the time.
Now, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has announced a series of measures and restrictions targeting the strengthening of liquidity of licensed commercial and specialized banks with the aim of ensuring a continued flow of credit to virus-hit businesses. Some of the restrictions imposed on banks include a suspension on discretionary payments such as the declaration of cash dividends, profit repatriation, share buybacks, increasing of government allowances and payments to director boards until the 31st of December this year.
The Monetary Board of the Central Bank says that it considers the strengthening of the liquidity positions of licensed commercial and specialized banks imperative given the adverse impact on liquidity and other key performance indicators due to the government's credit support scheme implemented to assist COVID-19 hit businesses and individuals. Due to this, the Monetary Board has decided to implement a series of extraordinary measures using provisions of the Banking Act and Monetary Law Act, which will ensure a continued supply of credit to meet urgent liquidity needs. In this respect, the board has put forward a set of 3 measures with the aim of reducing the pressure on bank liquidity. The first of the measures will look to provide additional funding under the refinance facility or other credit operations, enabling banks to provide working capital and other loans at concessionary rates of interest to spur demand. The second measure has set a deadline of 30th June 2021 to conditionally permit licensed banks to consider certain assets as liquid assets in the computation of the statutory liquid assets ratio. The board will also reduce the minimum requirement of banks' liquidity coverage ratios and net stable funding ratios to 90%, with enhanced supervision and frequent reporting up to this date. The third measure will enable licensed banks to avail themselves of liquidity through the Sri Lanka Deposit Insurance and Liquidity Support Scheme, or as loans advances in rupees under the framework of emergency loans and advances to licensed banks based on acceptable collateral and liquidity forecasts. The Monetary Board has also decided to impose restrictions on discretionary payments by banks, such as declaration of cash dividends, profit repatriation, share buybacks, increase of management allowances, and payments to director boards until 31st December 2020. Further, licensed banks will be required to exercise prudence and refrain in every possible scenario from incurring non-essential capital expenditure during this period. In addition, the Monetary Board has also decided to waive the annual assessment of domestic systematically important banks for the current year and make no changes to the current designated list published in December 2019. The central bank says that through these measures, it expects banks to prudently provide uninterrupted credit flows with the aim of reviving economic activity among all business sectors.
Now, former chairman of Pan-Asia Banking Corporation and head of ESNA Group of Companies, Eshan De Silva, has been appointed as the new chairman of the National Development Bank PLC. He succeeds Karvan Ratnayaka, who submitted his resignation to take effect on the 30th of April this year, citing personal reasons. De Silva is also the honorary counsel for the Republic of Kazakhstan since 2011 to date. His experience also includes a stint as a director of the Board of Investment from 2007 to 2013, where he also served as chairman of the BOI Audit Committee. He was also a board member of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority from 2008 to 2013. Sri Lankan stocks ended higher today for the second consecutive day following heavy declines in the first 2 days of reopening. Market turnover reached 3.6 billion rupees, one of the highest on record, boosted by commercial bank share trades. The benchmark stock index ended up 0.6% at close.
Today we saw a green market for the second consecutive days after the heavy declines. The market started off in green as well, quickly moving up the ASPI index, and then to around 40 points. After that, the market sort of stabilized for a while, and we saw some large transactions taking place today, mainly in commercial bank. The overall turnover was pushed up to around 3.6 billion rupees, one of the highest turnovers we've seen, specifically with commercial bank recording near 3 billion turnover. 58 million shares of commercial bank changed hands today, as some of the selling pressure that was in the market was absorbed by some new buyers. So with that, we saw a buying interest coming in to the other banking counters as well. So the bargain hunters seems to be a bit active. However, the important thing to note is that commercial bank transaction went actually significantly below the market value, and with that the commercial bank price also moved down. With it, the overall market also moved down in value.
Now, the Sri Lankan rupee was last quoted at 187.5 against the US dollar as of 3:51 p.m. today, 0.27% higher than last session's close. The currency is down 3.42% so far this year. Now, let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. We will be back after this short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching The First at 9. Now, an agency of the European Union, the European Medicines Agency, says that the vaccine for the coronavirus could be ready in a year's time, but under an optimistic scenario. The need for a vaccine to treat COVID-19 cannot be stressed enough, with over 5,000 people perishing to the virus over the last day. Though governments are battling hard to contain the spread of the coronavirus, some countries, especially the likes of Brazil, are struggling to do so. Meanwhile, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan were among more than 140 signatories of an open letter to the World Health Assembly, saying that any vaccine should not be patented, while insisting that the science should be shared between nations.
With almost 5 months having passed since the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus being reported from China, global infections have risen past 4.4 million, while the number of fatalities just 582 shy of a massive 300,000. However, the efforts of governments and frontline workers are reflected through the overall global recoveries, which is closing in on 1.7 million. In the meantime, according to a Canadian government source and a top US official, the US and Canada appear likely to extend a ban on non-essential travel unit the 21st of June amid the novel coronavirus pandemic. As cases of the disease continued to rise in both nations, the two neighboring countries had agreed to extend border restrictions until the 21st of May. Canada is now pressing for the measures to remain for another month. In Europe, Spain reported more than 200 daily deaths today, compared to yesterday's tally, which stood below 200. Italy, meanwhile, also recorded daily fatalities below 200, while France reported 83 deaths within the past day. In the meantime, an EU agency, the European Medicines Agency, says that a vaccine for the coronavirus could be ready in a year's time under an optimistic scenario. The head of biological health threats and vaccine strategy at the agency said that if everything goes as planned, some of the vaccines could be ready for approval in a year from now. As air travel slowly returns to normal after weeks of very few flights in Israel, passengers arriving at the airport have been requested to arrive 4 hours early in a mask and without an escort, get checked for fever, disinfect hands and watch out for the fleet of robotic cleaners. Israel's airport authorities said that the idea is to create a coronavirus-free area at Ben Gurion Airport near Tel Aviv. Meanwhile, in Asia, infections in Seoul coming from Itaewon reached 72 today, raising fears over what South Korean health authorities described as a truly cruel virus. The cases are traced to Itaewon, form the second largest cluster of infections in Seoul, following 98 cases linked to a call center in the southwestern area of Sindorim. In the meantime, Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has lifted a state of emergency imposed due to the coronavirus for the majority of the country, but kept in place for the capital, Tokyo and Osaka. In the meantime, the executive director of the World Health Organization's Health Emergencies Program, Michael Ryan, says that the virus will integrate into a list of endemic viruses and may never go away, while also urging countries to exercise caution when easing their lockdown.
The day-to-day case number down to the lowest possible level and get as much virus out of the community as possible, then when you open, you will tend to have less transmission or much less risk. If you reopen in the presence of a high degree of virus transmission, then that transmission may accelerate. If that virus transmission accelerates and you don't have the systems to detect it, it will be days or weeks before you know something's gone wrong. And by the time that happens, you're back into a situation where your only response is another lockdown. And I think this is what we all fear, is a vicious cycle of public health disaster followed by economic disaster, followed by public health disaster, followed by economic disaster.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.